What's good, YouTube? It's Quintessential Q back with another The First Descendant video. And in today's video, we will be going over my updated build for Sharen. Now, in my last video, I said that Sharen was one of the best bossing characters in the game, and that she was only beaten really by Ultimate Lepic and Gley / Ultimate Gley. Kind of considered them two the same character, as far as Gley and Ultimate Gley is concerned. And a lot of people were like, yo, you're crazy, man. You're smoking. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Sharen needs a rework. All of her abilities are terrible. Everything about her is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like as the meta has progressed, as we have learned more about the game, people's perspective at least changed somewhat about Sharen. There's still a good amount of people saying that Sharen's really bad, and I still disagree with those people, but I feel like there's a good amount of people that are starting to realize that Sharen is good, especially since the meta of the game has shifted to a point where we see that characters that can excel using weapon damage or gun damage are actually some of the stronger characters in the game. The odd person out being Lepic, who can pretty much just melt everything with his floor. But as far as other characters that are excelling well in the game, they seem to currently buff weapons to a absurd degree, and Sharen does that for snipers. Now, you can use shotguns and you can use launchers, but in testing, snipers seem to be the king of damage as far as Sharen's concerned, just due to how she works. Maybe your shotguns get a buff, because I feel like a couple of weapon types are a bit underutilized in this game, but that's a video for another day. But without further ado, let's get into the build. Starting with the reactor, we have the Tingling Mixture reactor. We have Afterglow sword mounting on this, and the reason why we're going with Afterglow sword mounting over Piercing Light is simply because Afterglow sword does more damage than Piercing Light over the course of a longer fight. So in Void Intercepts, where you have to go in and you have to pair up with the team so that the Void Intercept boss has more health, it has a little bit more resistances. In the course of a longer fight, due to the unique perk of Afterglow sword, gaining the critical hit rate and the weak point damage, you actually end up doing more damage in the course of a longer fight than Piercing Light, even though Piercing Light comparatively per shot usually does more damage than Afterglow sword. The consistency with the crits is really what puts Afterglow sword over Piercing Light, because missing out on a couple of crits can mean a considerable amount of DPS loss, especially if you go like 2-3 shots without getting a crit on Piercing Light, where you would have gotten at least one or maybe two of those crits on Afterglow sword. Our roles for this are Fusion skill power boost ratio and skill critical hit damage. Now, this is almost a perfect roll. Obviously, we would want these two stats to be yellow, but we would actually want electric skill power boost ratio over a skill critical hit, over fusion skill boost ratio. We still want the skill critical hit damage, but instead of fusion skill boost ratio, we would want electric boost ratio. The reason for that is, and let me show you my Afterglow sword so we can buff our skill power up here. But the reason for that is because currently, without being boosted any further by the substats, our electric skill power boost ratio is already at 0.972, while our fusion boost ratio is at 0.278, right? And that's with the base reactor stat plus the stat that we're getting on our substat here. So if we were to convert that substat into electric, we would actually be pushing this multiplier over like 1.0, probably be like 1.0, like 2 or something like that. So it would just make more sense to increase the already higher multiplier, basically. Skill critical hit damage is pretty good here. Our skill critical hit rate's pretty good, as well as our skill critical hit damage at 2.4. If you want to put more skill critical hit rate, if the 57% on this build just doesn't feel comfy enough for you, it feels pretty great to me. But if it's just not enough for you, you could probably also switch to skill critical hit damage for critical hit rate and get similar results as far as DPS is concerned. Now, even though this will primarily be a sniper build focusing on Afterglow Sword, we do actually use the Slayer component set. And the reason why we're using the Slayer component set on a sniper build is because we kind of want our abilities to be able to take care of trash mobs that we don't want to waste sniper ammo for, or we don't want to switch into one of our other weapons to take care of. Since our Tingling Mixture Reactor is Afterglow Sword mounting, we get the increase in our skill damage while we have our sniper in our hand. Even if it's equipped, if we are not currently holding the weapon, we do not get that boost. Easy way to show that is if I were to switch to holding the Thunder Cage, we lose about 7,000 skill power just off the rip. And that is definitely not good for us, not good for our damage at all. You will, with this build, you should be able to one-shot most of the trash mobs in both open world and void intercepts with either your 1 or your 4, either or. Those are our only 2 damaging abilities. And you wouldn't want to switch ideally into these weapons if you can help it. As far as the roles on these go, our auxiliary has max HP and MP recovery out of combat. We, of course, would want both of these stats to be yellow. This is pretty much the 2 roles you would want on this piece, but we would obviously want them to be yellow. For the sensor, we got max MP and MP recovery in combat. This is pretty ideal as well. Again, we would want both of these stats to be yellow. As far as the memory, we have max shield and MP recovery modifier with shield recovery in combat. Now, the only thing I would change about this is MP recovery modifier. You can actually roll defense on this piece. I would rather roll defense instead of the MP recovery modifier, and then shield recovery in combat, I would want that yellow. And the reason for that is one of the mods that you will see in the build actually drains our shield instead of our MP for the cost of the ability. Slayer Processor gives us a max shield and shield recovery modifier. This is perfect for, again, the mod that makes one of our abilities drain shield. We would want both of these stats to be yellow. You get the Slayer set from farming, what's the Pyromaniac? I was forgetting his name for a second. You get this from Pyromaniac, so just farm Pyromaniac set and a bunch of times and try to get the more ideal rolls as far as this set. Right now they're just at acceptable levels for me to do all the content in the game. If I want to really min max, I might go back in there and try to get these yellowed out if possible. As for our weapons, we're using the Thunder Cage, Greg's Reverse Fate, and Afterglow Sword, but I'm not going to hold you. These first 2 weapons we really barely touch if we can help it. The only time we really switch to either the Thunder Cage or Greg's Reverse Fate is only doing like the Ice Ball mechanic for Gluttony. We really don't need to switch it out to take care of mobs, and we're definitely not switching into either one of these weapons for DPS unless we're completely out of sniper ammo, which in that case we would just be in a bad situation regardless. Ideally, you would want to keep as much sniper ammo on you as possible. Going into our Afterglow sword, we have weak point expansion as our first mod in here. The reason why we're using weak point expansion instead of strength and first shot is because of the sake of consistency. Strength and first shot does more damage than weak point expansion. However, since you have to reload the shot in order to get the buff in the first place, and weak point expansion you don't, you get that as soon as on the first bullet that hits a weak point, you automatically get that buff. Weak point expansion is more consistent in that regard. Furthermore, there do come up situations where you actually don't have a clip to reload into, like you don't have ammo to reload into, and at that point this is pretty much a dead mod. While this is not a dead mod, as long as it's been past the 10-second cooldown and you hit a weak point, your next shot would be empowered by 140% weak point damage. So you don't have to rely on the reload, you don't have to have extra ammo and reserves, you don't have to worry about that. In strength and first shot you do. Furthermore, the animation of reloading in and of itself is technically also DPS downtime, where weak point expansion wouldn't have that same amount of downtime, because to get the max benefit of this, you're going to be reloading like every 10 seconds. That's roughly about every 3 to 4 bullets. The Afterglow sword holds a max of 6 bullets per clip. So you would shoot your first bullet. Well, you start out with 5 and avoid intercept. So you would reload at the start for that 1 extra bullet, shoot that bullet, shoot about 2 to 3 more shots, and then reload again. While weak point expansion, I can just shoot, and I can shoot into the clips empty, and I would only have to reload when the clip is actually empty, instead of reloading halfway through the clip to make the most of strength and first shot. Action and reaction gives us firearm attack at the expense of added recoil. We don't really care about this. We don't care about the added recoil, it's negligible here. Insight focus gives us critical hit rate and critical hit damage at 13% and 3.5% respectively. Concentration priority gives us firearm critical hit damage 33.9% and reload time modifier at minus 30%, increasing our reload. Another reason why you really don't want this, because this is actually a really good mod for this weapon. Focus fire gives us weak point damage plus 20%, firearm critical hit damage plus 3.5%. Better Insight gives us critical hit rate plus 33%. Rifling Reinforcement gives us firearm attack plus 32%. Weak Point Sight gives us weak point damage plus 35%. And Better Concentration gives us firearm critical hit damage plus 37.2%. Now this empty slot here is really like a flex slot. I plan on putting 1 more catalyst. It would probably be my last catalyst of the build. We would probably catalyst both of these spots maybe, and just leave this open, especially after the update where you can assign different socket types per loadout. So once that rolls in, it would make like weapon and descendant builds more comfy, but until then I'll probably just put a catalyst in 1 or again maybe 2 slots. I wouldn't put it in this last spot because the mods that can occupy this last spot all don't share the same polarity slot. And a couple of things that you can put here would be, for ammo purposes, would be like special round charge improvement or general round charge improvement. I usually equip this when I'm doing like the longer fights, so like a Frostwalker, like a Gluttony, something I know I'm probably going to be there for a while and I'm going to be needing to have constant ammo to keep my DPS up. I kind of slot these in. If it's something quick and easy that you can do, you would slot in one of the elemental mods, whether it be electric, toxic, fire, frost, what have you. Going into Sharen, wrong build. For our bossing build, we have Overcharged Edge as our Transcendent mod. So what Overcharged Edge does is that it drains our shield instead of MP, but we actually get increased ambush damage depending on the amount of shields consumed by the cast. So at base, right, if we didn't have this mod on, we would be doing 100% bonus ambush damage. As you see right here, outgoing damage increased by 100%, and that's at base. When we put Overcharged Edge on, we actually get an increase to 150% at base, but we can get an additional 50% going to 200% if we have enough of our shields consumed. Now, due to the Slayer set, the amount of shields consumed is actually a little bit over 50%. It's 57.5%, which is whatever. But we do at least, bare minimum, have to have at least 15% shield to be able to cast the ability. If we ever drop below 15% shield to cast the ability, we will not be able to cast the ability. There is one little nifty trick to get around that, and I'll show that a little bit later in the video. Now, with multi-talented is the next star of the show. We actually really like this mod in this build because it makes our invis on a extremely short cooldown. What multi-talented does, for those not aware, when using a dimension active skill cooldown minus 20.5% for 5 seconds when using the fusion active skill cost minus 6.1%. We don't really care about the rest of this paragraph. We only care about the first part, which is dimension active skill cooldown minus 20.5%. That gives us our invis pretty much on cooldown. What we're going to do is animation cancel the invis just so we get the damage buff, right? Because we get ambush damage whether we are in invis and we shoot, or whether we immediately cancel invis and do an action. And the ambush duration lasts for about 8 seconds. The invis itself lasts for about 5 seconds, but ambush, the buff, lasts for roughly about 8 seconds. Now, when it comes to the rest of the build, we have focus on the fusion skill power modifier plus 17%, skill cooldown minus 6.1%. We're really only having this for the skill cooldown. That's one of the reasons why it's unranked, because we really don't care about fusion modifier. Sharen's abilities have really good modifiers as already, and the tooltip is showing a minus in skill power modifier because that's coming from shot focus, and unfortunately the tooltip doesn't show you the positive modifier you get if it's for a specific damage type like fusion skill modifier. But we would actually be plus 2% skill modifier from where this is, or from our base 802, so we would be more at 804 skill power modifier. Moving on, we have electric, focus on electric power plus 77.2%, and skill cooldown plus 6.1%. Similar to focus on fusion, the skill cooldown will always cap at 6.1% whether it's max ranked or not, but the reason why we max rank this is because this is raw damage. Sharen, as far as her 1 and her 4 goes, scales better off raw skill damage than increasing her modifier. Now, you kind of want to try to cater to both still, because both are still important, but if you had to go one heavier over the other, it is definitely raw skill power over skill power modifier. Emergency measures is here because, again, we want our abilities to be useful, and we want our abilities to actually be able to take care of trash mobs, so we don't have to switch off of our sniper, or we don't have to use like sniper ammo itself to kill mobs, obviously. Spear and Shield is mainly here for the defense. The skill power is nice, and again, we do scale better off of raw skill power anyway, but we're mainly here for the defenses. We have long distance maneuvering as my sub attack module of choice. For those who are wondering how I have this at plus 15 instead of plus 10, all I did was put a catalyst in this spot. All these sub attack modules have the same exact polarity, which is this M looking polarity. So you would just put that polarity in here, and as long as you have a maxed out sub attack module, you would get the plus 15. It doesn't matter if it's a blue sub attack module or not, they will all get plus 15 if they're maxed out. MP conversion is the next up. We have this mainly for the cooldown, of course. We do lose a bit of MP, but one of our components is giving us MP, so it pretty much completely nullifies this altogether. Shot focus gives us firearm attack at the cost of skill power modifier, but the skill power modifier is completely negated by focus on fusion, and so we're just essentially getting firearm attack plus 15%. Nimble Fingers is skill cooldown minus 25.6%, which all of our cooldown mods together gives us a total cooldown of 74.3%, and that's before multi-talented. With multi-talented, we actually hit the cap of cooldown, which is 90%. Skill Insight is skill critical hit rate plus 115.4%, so that's really nice for us. And increased HP is, of course, the obvious of increasing our health by 218.5%. Now, when it comes to Overcharged Edge, as said earlier, it drains our shield in order to cast the ability, and if we drop below 15% shield, we actually cannot cast the ability. However, there is actually a bit of a caveat to that. If you are completely depleted on shield, I don't know if this is working as intended, but I've noticed that when you are completely depleted on shield and you activate your invis, you actually regain your entire shield back immediately. Now, even though you gain your shield back immediately, you do not get the plus 200% skill damage. I mean, you don't get the 200% ambush damage on your next shot of your sniper or whatever damaging ability or move that you do. You actually get the base 150%. This isn't bad. It's not the end of the world that you don't get that 200%, because most of the times if you're using invis when your shield's broken, you're probably using it to survive. Like maybe one of the Colossus hits you really hard and it hits you through your shield and a little bit of your health, you would immediately pop your invis and you would get your entire shield back. And since we have 90% cooldown, we're essentially getting our invis back every about 2 to 3 seconds. So it's really hard for us to die in most void intercepts. We actually become a lot tankier than we would appear on paper, simply because we can instantly refresh our shield due to this trick. Now we're in the training room just to show off a couple of things. One is Overcharged Edge. As you will see, when I use Overcharged Edge, it does drain my shield, but we get an immense amount of damage in return. Like I said, since we have the Slayer set, we actually drain a little bit more than 50%, is more like 57%, so nearly 60% of our shield will be gone, but we actually get a lot of damage in return for that. And due to the shield recovery modifiers and stuff on my components, it's actually pretty hard for me to lose my shield and go below that 15% mark that I need to be able to cast the ability. Like if I were to spam invis right now, as you see, I actually got a lot of activations of invis, and I'm immediately canceling the ability, right? And to immediately cancel the ability, all you have to do is just double tap the ability and it'll just be canceled. You'll still get the damage buff, which is that hand icon to the left of Sharen. You will still get the damage buff, but you just won't get the invisibility. Now that's fine, because in void intercepts, invisibility is kind of useless just because enemies can still see you. Well, at least the Colossus can see you. The little trash mobs can't see you when you're in invis, but the main Colossus boss itself can see you even if you're invis, so going invisible is kind of useless. So again, all we want to do is activate our ability immediately and then get our shot off. Now again, weak point expansion does refresh after every 10 seconds, so that 8 million crit that you keep seeing is going to happen about every 10 seconds if we happen to crit on that spot. Also remember that we're actually gaining more weak point damage per shot due to the buff on Afterglow Sword, which you are seeing like the stacks on the left. I tried to hurry up and get another shot with the invis up, but as you saw, we was actually building up stacks on Afterglow Sword over to the left. Doing this like no invis, so as we get more shots off consecutively, and I believe the threshold to get like your shots off is 5 seconds, like 3 or 5 seconds, something like that. It's more like 3, yeah, it's probably like 5 seconds. 5 seconds to get like between your first shot and the next shot you have to land in order to get it. Now, one thing I wish and I hope this actually changes in quality of life, every time I take a shot with the sniper, stop zooming me out if I want to just focus, because like this is like the only time recoil does get annoying, because like it zooms you out after every shot, but I hope that's fixed. Really quickly over the other 2 builds, the bossing build is the one with the most nuance, but we'll go over the other 2 builds just really quickly. We have an AoE mobbing build. This is mainly for like defense missions and stuff. We're using Void Domination over Overcharged Edge. What Void Domination does is our ult, which normally summons 9 blades, actually summons 20. And we actually can send all of these at a group of enemies. Now this is really good to like kill elites that are like really grouped up in enemies too, so we actually have this on the Outpost build as well. The reason why we don't use Overcharged Edge when doing Outpost is because Overcharged Edge reduces your duration for your invis by half. So instead of 10 seconds at base, you will have 5 seconds at base, and you can see that on the bossing build that my duration for my invis is 5 seconds, which is very terrible for Outpost, obviously. In the AoE mobbing build, as you can see, we are a lot more focused on ability damage, because for like defense missions and stuff like that, when we're farming those types of missions, all we want to do is just cast the 4 on cooldown to just like wipe entire like waves of enemies. And so we have a maxed out focus on fusion, a maxed out focus on electric, emergency measures maxed out. The only thing that's not maxed out is this front lines, just because we really just don't have the space for it. Like the best I could possibly get is like +2 on this if I were to upgrade this fully. For the Outpost build, all we do is give up some of our survivability just for duration. We take out the spear and shield that's on the other 2 builds for Outposts and just put a maximized duration. You're rarely going to die when you're doing Outpost missions, so it's not really a big deal that we give up some defenses for that. We use battle stamina mainly for the duration as well, just giving us increased duration on our invis, giving us 15.8 seconds, which is more than enough time to hack any outpost, whether it's a 3-terminal one or a 4-terminal one. We use Void Domination because in most outposts, once you hack that last terminal, the boss usually spawns like right in the middle of the cluster of enemies. So while you're still invis, you can immediately pop your 4 after you hack the last terminal and just send your entire ult at the boss. And usually, due to all the enemies being grouped up and the AoE explosions of the knives going off in the same spot, pretty much, you usually end up one-shotting the elite that spawns in just with your ult without having to use your sniper ammo, which is actually pretty comfy. Or at least at the bare minimum, you'll put in one shot where you can just walk up and hit it with like your first ability. Another useful reason why to hit the entire wave with the boss in it is, one, for just extra like stuff that you can dismantle, like extra weapon drops or stuff that you could potentially get, and 2, for extra ammo. You kind of want to stockpile the ammo when you're doing outposts so that you can take that ammo to the void, like the void reactor missions that you're going to do for your amorphous materials. So you kind of want to like stack up on sniper ammo before going to the void reactor, and then when you're at the void reactor boss, you can focus on using your sniper ammo there instead of using it on the outpost. But that will do it for my Sharen build. I showed you 3 builds. We had an AoE mobbing build, which is really just an ability based build. If you wanted to be ability based with Sharen on that second build, all you would do is just switch Void Domination for Overcharged Edge for that. But there was the ability based build, there's the normal sniper bossing build, as well as the stereotypical Sharen Outpost build as well. If you like these in-depth videos, this in-depth content, please leave a like and subscribe. It takes a while to try to get all this stuff together because this game is super grindy, but hey, I appreciate y'all supporting this content. A lot of people showed me love on my last Sharen video, so I wanted to provide an update on that because a lot of people also like that build. But again, like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one. Deuces.